I was so energized in respect to the deen. I mean, I couldn't wait. I didn't know much, but I couldn't wait to relate this Islam to other people. I had, matter of fact, I had almost my whole school, my martial arts school, had taken Shahada. And and we had over maybe almost close to 100 people making Salah. And I didn't know much about it, but it was because the way I felt about it. I was so wrapped up in the Quran. Because I love to read. I mean, I come out of an environment where reading was essential. And also in my schooling, reading, writing, and arithmetic was one of the essential parts of education. I used to love to read because I used to read wide before I was Muslim. We used to have to write book reports. We used to get stars. I used to get stars across the paper because I used to read and then write book reports. And then when I came to the Quran was a book that to this very day, I'm fascinated by it. I'm excited even just looking at the Musab. That's the way I am. That's the love that I have because that's the way the word is. So that's exciting. That's how exciting that I was about becoming Muslim. I felt, people like, they talk about feeling spiritual, but in a real sense, it's not really spiritual because it's not based on the proper belief. It's really hysteria. Like in the Christian church, there's a lot of sensationalized rituals. The preacher stirs people up and they shout and they drink and they jump up and things of that nature. But that's not, and they believe it's spiritual. But that's not spiritual. That's just frenzy. That's just being in a frenzy. That's just a psychological prompting up and rousing, of people's emotion. But in Islam, you really feel a spiritual vibe, from inside, from your mind, from your heart. Because when you read, especially when you're first reading about the Quran and you're reading the words of Allah and how those words jump out at you and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, there's things that I didn't even really understand as of yet. But because of being a Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up that mind, that understanding about Islam and so forth. And so that's the attachment. And then reading about the Messenger of Allah. Now, before I really got into the Messenger of Allah, I really was more into the Quran. Later on, because when I was coming up in Islam in the 70s, we didn't have that much literature. There wasn't like the books they have today. We had less than that. In the beginning, it was just the Quran and pages of hadiths. That's because Islam was fresh in this particular period of time. Islam was extremely new, and like I said, there was not too many Muslims and not too many masjids. There's only one masjid and two masjids afterwards. But the literature was coming from overseas, especially from Pakistan. A lot of our literature were coming from Pakistan, and we were getting the first hadiths came, al-hadith. That's what they were called. They were like a 3-volume set, or 2 to 3 volume set. But and we were excited about it. I mean, later on, as we got refined, we found that a lot of the hadiths in those hadiths was weak. But that's all we had during that time. We didn't think about what was weak, what was strong. We just said, oh, we got hadiths and excited. The first major authentic literature or hadith was Muslim, and it was a 3-volume set. Now we begin to understand Islam on a more stronger level. And then there were gobs of books like Maududi, towards Islam. He was one of the writers, and there was other writers. Then even though he's Ahmadi, there was Maulana Muhammad Ali, who wrote the Religion of Islam, and so forth. So we. This is when literature started to gradually pour in. Then there were teachers that were coming from overseas. Like I said, Hafiz Maqbul, he was one of the major, but he was mainly, he was Hafiz of Quran, so he mainly taught Quran. Then we started getting teachers. Now we had Suleiman Dunya. Suleiman Dunya came out of Asa University, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he was from the Maliki Madhab, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he was a teacher, and they had a masjid in 76th Street in Manhattan. That was a major That was a major funnel for education, and we used to swarm there. That's when we learned Mubari Islam and Marifatul Islam and those particular series of studies, and then Islam, educational wise, started to grow. From that point, and then that's when Muslims began to understand Islam more and more. Now, one thing I can say about that period that I was in at that time, we had little knowledge, but we were tightly knitted. We were a tightly organized and a unified group, not like today. And I have to say that, like today. Like today, we are splintered in so many areas of fractions. But then we had little knowledge, but we were strong and unified. We have a lot of knowledge now, and we're divided. So you make sense out of that, inshallah.
Inshallah. Your old friends and family acted reaction.
Right.
And you're Muslims.
Right.
3, 2.
Well, when I first became, and we say revert because Islam is fitra, right? But when I reverted to Islam, there was a struggle in the beginning with my parents. I didn't have that much problems with my siblings, but with my parents in the beginning, right? There wasn't a major thing. It wasn't a major clash. Because one thing my parents did see, they saw the change in me. Look, I was a young man growing up in this neighborhood, so I got involved in things that I shouldn't have, and they were concerned more about that. But when I became Muslim, that all changed, and my whole lifestyle changed. I got married, I had children, and I was more concerned. But the thing, I used to get in the clash with my parents because I had lost my apartment, and I wanted them having to bring my families and live with my mother and father at the time, and I had to live with them. So in the time I was making prayer and this and that, and my father kind of got disturbed about that, and he said, no, I don't want you making prayer in the house. I had to disobey him, as Allah said, but I was respectful. I did it where he couldn't see it, but I couldn't stop making prayer. That was a given. The thing, and I used to get in clashes with them because it was about Jesus being the Son of God and so forth. And, again, I was anxious to give that information. I was anxious to impart that positive understanding about what faith really is in terms of who Allah is. And that's one of the main things also that impressed upon me, the real fact of who Allah was and is. I knew something wasn't there in terms of Christianity. There was something missing. I didn't believe that Jesus was God. It didn't dawn on me. It didn't really factor in about the Son of God, although it was said. I may say it, but I didn't say it in the sense that Jesus is the God. I just said it because that's what's the theology, Christian theology. But my clash with my parents was that point. Now, what really calmed everything down with my father is that I knew the Bible, and I had a heads up. I had a step ahead. I knew the Bible. I read the Bible from cover to cover, constantly, frequently. So I knew. So Islam allowed me to pinpoint things in the Bible, about the unity of God and how Jesus was not God and these kind of things. So I was able to sit down with my father one day. And he opened up to me. He said, and he was questioning me, and I was bringing certain points, but I didn't bring everything from the Quran. I brought from the Quran through the Bible, and I used to sit there and. After that session with my father, I had no more problems with him in it then. He respected what I did. He never, he didn't question. He may not agreed with it, but he gave license to me doing it in that sense in this household, and my relationship with him grew stronger, in that sense, and he can understand. But he understand. Now I had a cousin too. Because I sat down with my family. I did, hopefully, as Allah has instructed. After we become Muslim, go to your family. I did that. I sat down with my cousins with the Bible, and I showed them, and no arguments about it. One of my cousins allowed me to sit down with her daughter. Now, normally Christians ain't gonna allow you to. I sat down with her daughter because her daughter was interested in Islam. But my family have so much respect for me, alhamdulillah, that they allow me to come into their household. To this very day, I told you, I go to my families every Sunday as dawah and and I sit down. Now, what I do now, because I'm, the love for my family turns to their health, because I'm health conscious, and I'm into, herbs and holistic things. So we have workshops every Sunday where I'm trying to impress upon my family about their health. But there's doors that I ask Allah to guide my family to Islam, whichever way that be. So I figure this may be one way Allah's fashioning me to do that. So what I do, I use their health thing as a vehicle to open up for Islam.